So disaster risk is gendered in many ways. The exposure that we have to hazards is gendered because of our work and care roles. Our vulnerability to hazards is gendered because of the many unequal social norms that exist in society between genders. And our coping capacities are gendered because of the resources, access to opportunities and other gendered inequalities that exist in our societies. The data that we have is pretty conclusive in that disaster risk is very gendered. We know so many, country context-specific examples where women die in higher numbers than men because their exposure vulnerability is different, because the social norms of that country or society impact their ability to take early warning when they receive messages, or perhaps they don't even receive messages. Women don't receive those early warning messages because they're delivered through means in which they don't have access to that information. So more data is always helpful, and I think particularly sex disaggregated data and reporting on Sendai Framework Monitor indicators definitely can be significantly improved, but the data that we have is more than enough to take action and fast. So there's been some progress in reducing some of those disaster risks from a gendered angle, but I really think in the next 7 years in the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, greater focus on how gender inequality drives risk is needed. I think at the same time over the last 3 years with the pandemic, we've seen how risk is increasingly complex and interrelated with other kind of shifts and norms that are happening in our societies. And so you see, countries across the Pacific where they were closed for COVID prevention measures, dealing with COVID outbreaks, also dealing with disasters caused by natural hazards and stretching those coping capacities really beyond limit. So I think really making sure that we are focusing on where we can make the biggest impact. And one key aspect of that is really making sure that we don't create new risks in the decisions that we're making, right? The development decisions that we're making, the investments that we're making, are we building schools next to flood-prone areas, or are we really making sure that in the future, at least we're not creating new risks, and then we'll have perhaps more resources to invest in risk reduction as well. One of the key gaps that exists in the disaster risk reduction space is that too often it's still just the national disaster management organisations and countries that are responsible for taking the action needed. What we really need is an all of society multi-sectoral approach. So we need the ministries for women, we need the agricultural ministries, planning ministries, finance ministries, all to come together to look at the decisions they're making and how they're risk informed and how and whether they're gender responsive, so that we're able to make sure that not only are we building more resilient societies, but we're strengthening gender equality and empowering women through that process.